And this brings up a central point, and for anyone who thinks that USC is going to make a leap. Now, I don't think I think that leaping to the playoff, that's asking too much for this year for USC. But I do think USC can leap toward the Pac-12 title, partly because the Pac-12 has been so mediocre in recent years, so that the floor is so low that USC can make a jump and get right to the top of the conference. What's also going to help USC is this Pac-12 championship game formatting adjustment, which means that USC doesn't have to beat out Utah in the Pac-12 South. It can just finish second in the conference. It gives the Trojans a better avenue toward the title game. And assuming that USC does lose in Salt Lake City in October, well, that sets up the Trojans well for a revenge game in Las Vegas. So, I mean, like there are lots of avenues for USC to do well in the Pac-12. But in terms of Notre Dame and in terms of getting all the way to the playoff, I do think it's asking a little bit too much, precisely for the various reasons that you've outlined. All that having been said, it's not just that USC's coaching staff was bad. USC's coaching staff, as you have explained, Brian, was lazy. And the Athletic did some reporting right after the firing of Clay Helton about just how lazy he was, and defensive coordinator Clancy Pendergast, he didn't recruit. He did not recruit. You had a defensive coordinator who's not recruiting. So not only is USC getting the upgrade from Pendergast to Alex Grinch in terms of quality of coaching, but also you're just getting a guy who's, and I'm not even saying that Alex Grinch is the bee's knees or like the messianic answer to all problems in terms of recruiting, but just the fact that he and the rest of Lincoln Riley's staff are making a full effort. Just that. So, like, there are just so many ways in which USC hit rock bottom under Helton. You get the quality of the coaching and the effort on the recruiting trail. Both of those pieces, that's really the cornerstone argument, plus Caleb Williams, for why USC can make a significant jump in the context of 1 year.
I'd be shocked if they're not at least 8 wins. I mean, and that's the floor for me when you look at their schedule. I mean, you talk about Utah on the road. I mean, your rest of the road games are Stanford, who's just not going to be good. I mean, if Lincoln Riley's the coach people think he is, you shouldn't be losing to Stanford. You've got Oregon State on the road. I love what Jonathan Smith is doing, but again, it's like when Purdue's good. I don't care if Purdue's good. Notre Dame should still beat Purdue, right?
And I think that's the key. I think that's the key hinge point game of the season. That Oregon State game in week 4. You get out of Corvallis. You know this. Like, you know that Oregon State used to be good. Oregon State beat Notre Dame in a Fiesta Bowl 2 decades ago.
Long time ago.
And Oregon State, and I'm not just going to dump shade on Notre Dame. Oregon State ruined a few of Pete Carroll's seasons.
Right.
So if USC can get past the landmine in Corvallis, I think the team is really set to do well. I think that's really the hinge point game.
For me, I think it even goes beyond just what they've done in the past. I think that's one of the few there's only a few teams in the Pac-12 that to me are trying to build physical football teams. UCLA is doing it. Utah's done it for years. Oregon State's the other. And that's the thing that Jonathan Smith has brought. He's trying to establish a really quality running attack there. If USC can kind of show like, hey, we can hold our own in the trenches, I think it's also going to kind of be a game where we kind of see where they are in that development too. I don't know if you agree or disagree with that, but it's not just the win or the loss. It's, how do you handle a team that's going to play big boy football? Because, I mean, if you look at the schedule, the other teams that we talked about, they don't play until, mid-October to the end of the season with UCLA and Notre Dame. And I think that's going to be the king. And I think that's the other thing that's going to hurt USC a little bit too, just as an outsider looking in, is the poor recruiting has hurt the depth. That's something that hurt Notre Dame for years, is the lack of depth. Where's USC going to be in the trenches, especially when you talk about depth when you get into November? I think that's going to be the other thing, because that's the thing that would hurt Notre Dame during some of Kelly's years, is they'd be really good, and then they get to November and just swoon because either the strength program wasn't strong enough or good enough, or the depth wasn't there and guys were playing too many snaps, whatever the case may be. So I think that's the other interesting thing, and that's what the UCLA game is going to be. I think the UCLA game kind of is perfect for USC, because it's going to be sort of you've been playing teams that are not necessarily physical football teams as you get ready for Notre Dame. That's going to be really good in the trenches. That UCLA team, that's one thing Chip has done, especially more so on offense and defense. Yeah. But that USC defensive line is going to know what it's like to get hit in the mouth before they go play Notre Dame at the end of the season because of what UCLA does.